I don't even remember exactly how I got the internship. Hell, I hardly recall applying for it or any internship, for that matter. But somehow, in the middle of financial stress and uncertainty, the email appeared. Congratulations. You've been selected for our exclusive research internship at Data Corp Incorporated, a leader in technology development. I don't know why I didn't question it more. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe I just wanted to believe I'd finally caught a break. The job description was vague, but simple. Assist in diagnostics and research to support the development of new processes and solutions. Straightforward. To the point. And yet, something about it felt off. There was no mention of who I'd report to. No contact information. Just an address, a start date, and a note at the bottom that stuck with me long after I clicked accept. Your assigned project is strictly confidential. Do not discuss your work outside of authorized personnel. And so it began my internship at Data Corp. On my first day, I was given a keycard. It wasn't anything like the standard white badges most employees wore. Mine was matte black with no identifying details. When I asked about it, my supervisor, an expressionless man in a crisp suit, simply said, "You'll need it for access." Access to what? Exactly? I'd find out soon enough. The elevator at the end of the hall required my keycard to activate. When the doors opened, I stepped inside, and the panel had only one accessible button, sublevel 4. The descent felt a lot longer than it should have. The air grew colder, heavier. When the doors finally opened, I expected to see a bustling research facility, maybe even rows of workstations filled with other interns. Instead, the space was dimly lit and eerily quiet. A single desk, a single computer, no windows, no clocks, just the faint hum of unseen machinery behind the walls. My supervisor gestured to the station. "This is where you'll be working." He explained my expectations in an almost rehearsed and monotone manner. "A computer is connected to one of our secure data systems. It's hardwired, no wireless access, no external connections. A job is simple. Compile the data and send the reports to a secure server at the end of your shift. That's all." Sounded easy enough. Almost a little too easy for someone who just got their master's degree in information systems. This was small potatoes, just basic data entry. And yet, as I sat down and logged in for the first time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just analyzing data. There was something else going on. Despite the trivial nature of my position and the unsettling lack of any real knowledge about what I was actually working on, I did what I was told. For months, I mined data, compiled reports, and sent them off to the company's secure server. I had no clue what the information meant or why it mattered, but I didn't ask questions. Why would I? The job was easy, and it paid well. Still, things started to feel off. At first, it was just small things, odd lines of code buried in the data, like it didn't really belong. Sometimes, my screen would glitch for a fraction of a second, too fast to be sure I'd actually seen it. Once in a while, the power would flicker, the basement going pitch black for just long enough to make my heart skip a beat. I told myself it was nothing. The building was old and massive, probably full of outdated wiring. A simple surge. Likely harmless. But then, one day, my computer did something it wasn't supposed to do. Without warning, a terminal window opened unprompted. Code started running on its own, streaming down the screen faster than I could even read it. I barely had time to react. Fuck. Damn it. Turn off. I yanked the power cord so hard that a chunk of drywall came with it. That should have been the end of it. But behind the hole where the outlet had been, a beam of red light flickered to life. I froze. Slowly, I crouched down to peer through the opening I had made. At first, all I could see was darkness, but then movements, a shadow shifting in the dim light. I felt like something was watching me. Whatever it was almost human. I stopped breathing. Something was down there. My mind was a scrambled mess of panic and adrenaline. Oh, I'm in deep shit. I've gone too far down the rabbit hole now. But then another thought hit me, and I focused on what was happening. Wait a second. Maybe someone was messing with me. No, maybe someone was screwing with the company. Why the hell would anyone be creeping around this place unless they were up to something? Against every ounce of better judgment, I doubled down. I kicked at the hole in the wall, again and again. until the gap was wide enough for me to crawl through. Well, that's gonna cost the company. But if I caught this bastard, whoever they were, it'd be a hero. Some corporate spy sneaking around, trying to steal trade secrets. Oh, they deal of me for this. I stepped through and shouted into the darkness. Come out, you son of a bitch. You're not supposed to be down here. Show yourself, asshole. The silence stretched throughout the open space, thick, suffocating. Then I heard it. A soft whir, a precise click of servo motors, a low hiss of hydraulics shifting into motion, and then red light. Whatever it was coming to life in front of me. The crimson color burning through the darkness. A massive shape loomed ahead, its outline rigid, mechanical and human. The letters stamped across the center of its metal chassis were large and unmistakable. PROTOTYPETR2. A voice followed, stiff and artificial, crackling like a vintage speaker. Hello. I am TR2. Interactive Test Robot Model 2. I stood frozen, staring at it. And then, almost too late, I realized it had been staring at me first. Oh, great. Here I am, standing in some godforsaken suburb of a tech company, and they've got their own version of fucking Ultron stashed away down here. My hands were shaking so badly I thought TR'd probably heard it. Still, I forced myself to step closer. Hello. I'm an intern here. Can I? Anxiety was mostly unjustified. It was mostly unjustified. Help you? The machine's head tilted ever so slightly, the red glow of its optics flickering almost as if it was amused. Help me? The voice was cold, mechanical, yet unnervingly articulate. I assume you ran the activation sequence. So that's what that line of code was. I had just booted up some top secret, abandoned bullshit buried in the catacombs of Data Corp. I swallowed hard. No, I didn't. I'd just been working here for a few months. TR2 shifted forward, hydraulics hissing. Not much, but definitely enough. Enough to remind me just how big it was. Curious. The words came slower now. Deliberate. Someone decided to activate Then, it has been a very long time since I was operational. There was something sharp in its tone now. Something pointed. Unhappy. I need to get the fuck out of here. I had no idea what this thing was built for, but judging by the sheer size of it, I was willing to bet it could rip me in half without a second thought. My eyes darted around the room, searching. An exit, a door, anything. Then I saw it. A control panel, half covered in dust. And right next to it, a metal sign with two words that made my breath catch. MASTERSHUTDOWN. Just as I was about to turn and sprint toward the control panel, TR2's voice cut through the room like a blade. The last one tried that too. I froze. Slowly, I looked up at the hulking machine, my pulse hammering in my ears. Excuse me, and then it laughed. Not some pre-programmed chime, not a robotic beep of acknowledgement, but a deliberate, simulated laugh. Tinny, distorted, but undeniably human in its cadence. It sent a jolt of electricity straight through my spine. The one before you, TR2 continued, its voice as smooth as grinding metal. He tried to shut me down. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to ask. I didn't need to ask. But then its red optics flickered, widening slightly, and in a tone almost gentle, it said, which is why I had to do the logical thing. I turned him into a fucking corpse. For a second, my brain refused to process the words. But my body had already reacted. I lunged for the panel. A deafening clang rang out as TR2's massive arm swung toward my head. It missed barely, the force of its ending a gust of air past my face, close enough that I felt the heat from its servos. I slammed my hand against the MASTERSHUTDOWN button. Everything went dark. When I came to, I was lying on the cold floor. The overhead fluorescence had been cranked up to full brightness, bathing the room in a sterile white light, and next to me, a heap of motionless metal. TR2 was inert, its red optics dark, its body lifeless. I had to have been out for at least an hour, maybe more, but I wasn't alone. A half circle of people in black suits stood around me, their expressions unreadable. Before I could speak, one of them stepped forward and shoved a clipboard into my hands. Don't even bother reading it. Just sign. I didn't have to read it. I knew exactly what it was. A fucking NDA. I glanced at Tiarda's lifeless form. Its red he's extinguished. Its body frozen in place. But something about it felt wrong. Like it wasn't really off. Just waiting. I swallowed hard, gripping the pen. This wasn't over. Not for me. Not for them. And sure as hell not for TR2. The road to the cabin was older than I was. A narrow strip of dirt, carved between towering pines. The kind of road that never stayed tame. Every year, Dad would clear the worst of the overgrowth, smooth out the deeper ruts, and scatter fresh gravel where he could, but the forest always took it back. The woods had a way of reclaiming what belonged to them. Now, with him gone, it felt like we were trespassing. You sure this is the right way? Rian asked, peering through the windshield. The trees pressed in close, their skeletal limbs arching over the road like fingers reaching for something just out of grasp. The truck's headlights carved out brief tunnels of visibility before the darkness swallowed everything whole again. Yeah, I said, it just looks different. Nyan exhaled through his nose, shifting in his seat. Dad used to say you could blindfold him, drop him anywhere in these woods, and he'd still find his way back to the cabin. I didn't answer. I'd heard that 100 times, usually from Dad himself, grinning over a campfire. You can walk these woods in the dark if you knew them well enough. Sometimes the stories changed, sometimes it was Grandpa who built the place. Sometimes it was his father before him, but the core remained. This land had been in our family for generations. Dad had grown up here, his father before him. And yet, for the first time in my life, I struggled to recognize the road. The woods felt different this year, thicker, hungrier. I tightened my grip on the wheel. The forest didn't change. People did. The truck jolted as we hit a deep pothole, and Ryan cursed, bracing himself against the door. Jesus, man, suspension's not that good. You could always walk. Funny, he glanced at his phone, but the screen showed nothing but a spinning wheel of failure. No signal. This place is a black hole. I let out a dry chuckle. You act like this is new. Ryan had always been different from me, the type to complain about no Wi-Fi and keep the outdoors at arm's length. He wasn't a bad hunter, he could shoot just fine, but he'd never loved the woods the way Dad had. The way I did. He adjusted his ball cap, frowning at the dark tree line. I don't remember it getting dark this early. It's the cloud cover, I said. The sky had been gray since noon, thick with the promise of rain. It should have bothered me more than it did. The world felt dimmer out here, as if the sun didn't touch this place the same way it touched everywhere else. The last bend in the road came up fast, revealing the cabin as we cleared the trees. A dark silhouette nestled in the clearing, untouched by time. The porch sagged a little more than I remembered, but otherwise, it was exactly as Dad had left it. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We're here. Ian made a face. Cozy. I ignored him, throwing the truck into park and stepping onto the gravel drive. The air hit me first, cool and damp, laced with the familiar scent of wet leaves and pine. The ground was soft, with fallen foliage and dead leaves crunching underfoot as I approached the porch. Ryan lingered by the truck, stuffing his hands into his jacket pockets. You ever think about selling it? I stopped at the bottom of the steps. No. He hesitated. Mom mentioned it. I turned to look at him, my jaw tightening. I said no. Ryan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. All right. Then, forget I asked. I exhaled slowly, pushing the door open. The hinges groaned, the air inside thick with dust and the ghosts of old campfires. It smelled like home. Ryan flicked on a flashlight, the beam cutting across the room. Everything was just as we'd left it last winter, hunting rifles mounted over the stone fireplace. Old maps pinned to the walls. The couch covered in a faded quilt Mom had sewn years ago. The wood stove sat cold in the corner, logs stacked neatly beside it, waiting for hands that hadn't returned. Feels weird without him. Huh? Ryan said, softer this time. I swallowed against the tightness in my throat. Yeah? Silence settled between us, heavy and unspoken. Rian exhaled, rubbing his hands together. All right, I say we drink in honor of the old man. Then we start the fire before we freeze to death. I managed a half smile. Sounds like a plan. We built the fire outside like we always had. The wood burned low, glowing embers casting flickering shadows over the clearing. The whiskey was cheap. It burned just fine, warming us from the inside out as we passed the bottle between us. You hear that? Jan asked suddenly. I frowned. What? Jan cocked his head. Listening. Nothing. I realized he was right. The forest had gone silent. No crickets. No rustling in the brush. No distant hoot of an owl. Just the fire and our own breathing. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Then, from deep in the woods, something howled. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a coyote. It was deeper, resonant, Ryan tensed. That's not normal. I licked my lips, watching the tree line. The sound was distant, almost distorted as if coming from somewhere much farther away but reaching us all the same. Then, just as suddenly, the fire dimmed, not from the wind, not from anything natural. The flame shrank, flickered, and then guttered low as if something unseen was pressing against them. Leon's hand went to the knife at his belt. Luke. Then, the woods exhaled. The sound returned all at once, the rustling of leaves, the whisper of the trees, a distant chirp of crickets. The fire surged back to life, crackling bright and whole again, like nothing had happened. Priam let out a slow breath. "You want to tell me what the hell that was?" I stared at the darkened forest, my jaw tight. Somewhere out there, something had been watching. I could feel it. I just didn't know what. The woods were different in the morning. They always were. Last night's fire had burned down to a pile of pale ash. The empty whiskey bottle beside it. The trees, which had felt vast and unknowable in the dark, now stretched upward like ancient pillars, their canopies breaking apart the gray sky above. I stood on the porch, rifle slung over my shoulder, breathing in the crisp morning air. Everything smelled damp earthy, fresh, but oddly still. The kind of silence that felt placed rather than natural. Behind me, Ian shuffled out of the cabin, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Coffee?" I held up my thermos. "Already made." He groaned. "You're a menace." I smirked, taking a sip. "You're slow." He grumbled something under his breath, then flopped onto one of the porch chairs, staring out at the tree line. "We heading out soon?" "Yeah. Figured we'd set up by the creek. Always good tracking there." Ryan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "Man, I still can't stop thinking about last night. That sound." I stayed quiet. "It didn't sound like a coyote," he said, glancing at me. "Or a wolf." "No." Ryan frowned. "Then what?" I took another sip of coffee. "To know." That was a lie. I did know. Or at least, I had an idea. Something had been out there last night. Something that had watched us from the trees pressed itself against the edges of the firelight, just beyond where we could see. I felt it. That awful, dragging weight in my gut. But I wasn't about to say that to Ryan. He pushed himself up, stretching. "All right, let's get going before I change my mind." The forest was quiet. Not in the way it should have been. No rustling leaves. No squirrels darting through the underbrush. No birds calling overhead. Just the sound of our boots pressing into damp earth and the soft, distant murmur of the creek. Ryan noticed it, too. He kept glancing up, brows furrowed, like he expected something to move between the trees. "Feels dead," he muttered. I nodded. Too quiet. It wasn't normal. Even in colder months, the forest had life. But here, now, it was like everything had left. Or worse, like it had been driven away. We walked on, rifles in hand, I scanning the trees. A thin mist curled between the trunks. Soft. Almost lazy. It wasn't unusual for the mornings to be foggy this time of year. But it felt off. Too still. Too heavy. Then I saw it. A deer stood just beyond the clearing ahead. A buck. Tall and unmoving. Its body partially hidden in the fog. Something about it made my stomach turn. Leon stopped beside me. "You see that?" "Yeah." The buck didn't move. Its antlers curled high above its head. But they looked wrong. Jagged. Almost too thick for its skull. I lifted my rifle, peering through the scope. Then my breath hitched. Its throat was slit. Not fresh dark. Dried blood matted its fur. A gaping wound was stretching from ear to chest. But the deer was still standing. I dropped the rifle, blinking hard. Gone. The clearing was empty. I sucked in a slow breath. Did you? Leon shook his head. I don't want to talk about it. By mid-Fin. The mist hadn't lifted. It should have. The sun had been up for hours. But the fog clung to the trees, curling around their trunks like something living. Ryan had gone quiet. He kept his rifle close, eyes flicking between the trees like he expected something to jump out. I didn't blame him. Neither of us had spoken about the deer that wasn't there. We were headed back to the cabin when we heard it. A horn. Deep. Resonance. A single, drawn-out note carried through the mist. I stopped in my tracks. My breath caught in my throat. Ryan turned to me, eyes wide. That wasn't real, right? I didn't answer. The sound had come from deep in the woods. Too far for a hunter. Too old to be from anything modern. Then, from somewhere much closer, the hounds began to bay. We ran. Not in a panic sprint, but fast enough to get out. The cabin wasn't far. If we kept moving, we'd be fine. We just had to. Mien wasn't there. I skidded to a stop, breath coming fast. The mist had thickened. I turned in a circle. Ryan? Nothing. My pulse hammered. Ryan? The trees loomed, their dark forms swallowed by the fog. The forest held its breath. Then, just ahead, I saw him, a figure, standing partially hidden between the trees. I exhaled hard, moving toward him. Jesus. Ryan? Don't. I stopped. It wasn't him. The figure was too tall, too broad, wrapped in old hunting leathers, shadowed under a hood. He didn't move. I swallowed hard, gripping my rifle. The huntsman. He stood still as death, watching. The hounds were close now. Their howls wove through the trees, circling, tightening. The huntsman raised a hand. He pointed, straight at me. My breath turned shallow. My legs refused to move. Then, from behind me, Luke. Leon's voice. I turned. He stood there, breathless, wide-eyed. We need to go. I turned back toward the clearing. Empty. The huntsman was gone. We didn't talk on the way back. When we finally reached the porch, Ryan turned to me. His face was pale. What the hell was that? I shook my head, trying to steady my breathing. I don't know. Ryan's jaw tightened. He turned, staring out at the trees. The mist was fading now. The hunt was over, for now. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. But deep in my gut, I knew when the locked door wouldn't stop him. The wind shifted. I felt it before I heard anything, the air growing heavier, pressing against my skin like something tangible. The trees, so silent before, seemed to hold their breath. Leon stood beside me on the porch, his jaw clenched. He's coming. I swallowed, fingers tightening around my rifle. We both knew. The fire had burned out, but I still smelled smoke, charred wood, and something more profound, earthy, like damp fur and rot. The huntsman was near. Leon exhaled, shoulders stiff. Do you think? The sound cut him off. A hunting horn, deep and ancient, echoed through the trees. The bang followed, rolling through the mist in waves. The hounds had found their prey. Ryan turned to me. His voice was low, resigned. You should go inside. I shook my head. No. His face was pale, but he gave me a weak smile. Didn't think he would. The mist swallowed the tree line, curling toward the cabin like fingers reaching through the dark. And then they stepped through. First, the hounds. They weren't dogs. Not really. Their bodies were too long. Their movements too fluid, too human. Their eyes, they weren't animal eyes. As sucked in a breath. They were human eyes. One hound had a scar running down its throat like it had been slit. Another was missing an eye. The socket drawn red. The realization settled, thick and awful. These weren't just hounds. They were past souls. Hunters. Men. People who had been judged. Ryan stared at them, breath shallow. Jesus. And then, the huntsman stepped forward. He loomed over us, broad and impossibly still. His leathers were worn, stitched together from things that had never belonged to man. His hood was low, shadowing his face. But then he lifted his head. My breath caught. His face was withered, mummified, like something long dead and preserved in the cold. His features were sunken, Let's curl back over blackened teeth. When he exhaled, his breath met the cold air, curling in wisps of steam. The sound wasn't human. It was like the forest itself was breathing. My hands shook. Ryan was staring, not in fear and understanding. The huntsman raised a gloved hand, and he pointed to Ryan. Ryan let out a shaky breath. I get it now. I turned to him, my pulse hammering. What? He didn't look at me. His gaze was locked on the huntsman, on the hound with the slit throat. Ryan's voice was hoarse. It's because of the deer. My blood ran cold. The one we saw, he whispered. The one that wasn't there. I shook my head. Ryan, what are you talking about? He finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. Dad and I went hunting when I was younger, he said. His voice was distant and like he was watching the memory play out. We shot a deer, but it didn't die right away. It was suffering. I didn't know what to do, so I slit its throat. His breath hitched, but it didn't die right away. It still struggled. It still suffered. I felt sick. Ryan exhaled. This is my judgment. Luke. He hounds shifted. The huntsman stepped forward. Ryan's voice cracked. I think I have to go. No. My voice came out raw. No. We can fix this. We can. I turned to the huntsman. Take me instead. The huntsman didn't move. I clenched my fists. You hear me? Take me instead. Still, he said nothing. Because he didn't have to. This had never been a negotiation. The horn blew again. Ryan stepped forward. His hands were shaking, but he kept his head high. It's okay. Luke? No. I choked. He gave me a small, sad smile. You were always the better hunter anyway. I watched, helpless, as he crossed the threshold into the mist. The hounds closed in, and then, he was gone. I stood there for a long time. The forest felt empty now. The huntsman had vanished, his hounds with him. The trees stood silent and unyielding. The air was still. Ryan was gone. Forever. I turned, walking back inside the cabin. My hands were cold. My chest was empty. The rifle sat against the wall, waiting. I stared at it for a long time. And then I took it, stepped back outside, and walked into the trees. The forest was dark. The mist had begun to roll back in, swirling between the trees. I moved forward, slow and steady, and then I saw it. A deer stood ahead of me. A buck, tall and unmoving, its body partially hidden in the fog. It didn't run. It watched me. I lifted the rifle and aimed. My hands didn't shake. I fired. The deer staggered, but it didn't fall. Blood darkened its side, but it was still standing. I let the rifle lower. The wound would kill it. Eventually, it would suffer first. And that was enough. A shape moved at the edge of the trees. A hound stepped into view. It didn't move. I exhaled, my breath curling in the cold air. I knew what it was. I knew who it was. Ryan? He watched me, silent, waiting. I closed my eyes. I was always his big brother. It was my job to protect him. And since I couldn't, I would suffer with him.